first one? Good evening, committee members, visiting councillors, members of the public. Welcome to the Planning Policy Committee. I will now read out the emergency evacuation announcement. Should we be required to evacuate the building, would you please leave the building via the rear doors of this hall, turn right and go through 2 sets of double doors to the car park, which is the assembly point. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note this meeting will be audio recorded. Please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. Members, there are 4 microphones on the tables for use during the meeting. When you are invited to speak, please wait until this microphone in front of you has been switched on before speaking, as the microphone needs to be hearing loop and for the audio recording. Where possible, please help by passing microphones to each other and use the hand gel and antibacterial wipes on the table if you do touch the microphones. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against the recommendations. Numbers will be noted by the officers. Before we get to the agenda proper, can I just explain to our visiting councillors, Mr Goodwin will make the presentation of each section of the agenda. If you have any questions, if it's possible, can you wait until he finishes his presentation on each item, because sometimes you may have a question and he will actually be addressing it further down his report. Can I just elaborate a little bit? You may not agree with a lot of the ideas that are on some of these evidential documents, but we need to be seen to have considered all aspects when making our final presentation to the inspectorate, and we have found of late that some councils have lost out because they have not gone down that route and have just discussed 2 preferred options, for example. So some of these items will not be perhaps in accordance with Rochford District Council policies, but they do have to be considered in the light of the evidence to be presented. Okay, I think that's it. We will now move on to the agenda proper. Apologies for absence. We have none. Non-members attending, we believe have councillors Mrs Gooding, Mrs Gadsden and Councillor Ward. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January 2021. I hope members have had the opportunity to read that. If you're all in agreement, can I sign those in due course?
Agree.
Agree? Everybody in agree? Well, for those that you weren't, for those that were at the meeting, are we in agreement?
Agree.
Thank you. I will sign them. Okay. Oops, no, you've left something on the floor. Item number 4, to receive any declarations of interest. None. Okay, item number 5. Over to you, Mr Goodwin.
Thank you, Chairman. So item number 5 is the new local plan spatial options consultation paper. This is the second stage in the preparation of the Council's new local plan. Members may remember that we consulted on an issues and options document in early 2018. The issues and options document set out a range of challenges and opportunities about how planning issues could be addressed in the local plan. So this is the next stage in that process. So it's about refining the options available to the Council. It's about weighing up the merits of different options and ultimately going out to consultation so that interested parties can make representations on those options. What I would say is it's a fairly lengthy document. It's split out into sections. It first considers what the Council's vision should be for the district alongside some objectives. It considers emerging strategy options relating to the scale and distribution of future development. It then goes through a number of spatial themes which will all contribute to achieving that vision. And finally, it goes through individual settlements in the district and considers their individual needs, individual visions, and provides an opportunity for interested people to comment on specific options relating to that settlement. So as I say, it's a fairly detailed document. It obviously sets out a lot of different options and is structured around a number of questions which obviously give interested people an opportunity to provide feedback on those options. So the recommendation before the committee is that this document goes out to public consultation. We are required to consult for a minimum of 6 weeks. And if agreed, it's likely that that consultation would commence either Monday the 19th of July or possibly Monday the 26th of July to be confirmed. And alongside that item, there is a consultation strategy at Appendix C. This sets out broadly how the council would consult on that consultation, how it would engage interested members of the public alongside other stakeholders, and as I say, sets out a minimum to be compliant with the Council's statement of community involvement. It is in the Council's gift to go beyond what's in that consultation strategy, but as mentioned at a recent working group meeting, the issue of whether face-to-face meetings can take place will need to be subject to a risk assessment and take due accord of the coronavirus regulations that are in place at that time. As I say, the recommendation before the committee is that this document, Appendix A, is consulted on for a period of 6 weeks and that consultation is carried out in accordance with that consultation strategy. We have also asked that authority be delegated to the Assistant Director for Place and Environment in consultation with the portfolio holder. And the main reason for that is to be able to address any minor textual or cosmetic changes that are needed to make the document accurate and accessible at the time of consultation. So that could include improved mapping as well as improved presentation overall. And that would obviously allow us to meet that date of the 19th or 26th of July. So that's probably all I have to say on that, Chairman, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 5.3, 3.9, fifth point, distributing digital and physical leaflets setting out the key consultation information, including a QR code to the consultation portal. Can the officer confirm that that will be a leaflet to every single household within the district, and will those leaflets be tailored to specific areas and not just a generic leaflet? Did you get that, Dan? I did, yes. Yeah. That's all right. I think this is, Chairman, if I just may add to that, well, Dan's sorting. Thank you. Sorting, right.
Chairman, I don't think we need it. I think we can hear each other. I mean, I can hear you.
Go.
Oh, sorry, Sonia.
Okay. Are we good to go? Right. You heard the. Do you want to refresh on the question, Mr. Goodman, or are you happy with?
Can
I think I have the question.
Yeah, but can I just finish what I was just going to
Of course,
say,
yeah,
which was that at the issues and options stage, a leaflet went to every single household. So I think we would be doing an injustice if we didn't replicate that at this stage, considering this is probably a more important stage.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I mean, the honest answer is that no, at this time, a leaflet to every household in the district isn't planned. You're right to say that at the issues and options stage, we did do that. And from memory, I believe it cost something in the region of about £15,000 to do that to, I think, 35,000 houses. At the moment, it's not budgeted for that we could do that. It's obviously possible to do that. It wouldn't require a lot of officer resource, but it obviously would require a financial resource that isn't currently budgeted for. I can understand arguments both for and against. I mean, just to reflect on the issues and options consultation, we obviously sent leaflets to 35,000 houses, but we only had something in the region of 550 representations. So whilst it may have raised awareness, it didn't ultimately lead to a high response rate. But what I would say is, I think ultimately it would probably need to be a decision for council if this committee wanted to recommend to council that budget was made available for that, because at this time the budget doesn't exist for us to be able to do that, and I would estimate it would probably be in the region of 17,500, probably allowing for some inflation. So I mean, what I would say, and I appreciate this isn't directly your question, but I mean, I have strong confidence in the measures that we are proposing, that they would be effective at raising awareness, possibly not as directly as what you're proposing, but equally, I suppose this has been put together weighing up the pros and cons in terms of both response and resource and value for money in that sense. So I think, Chairman, I've probably left the door open really to members of the committee to decide if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, if I might just add, I also think that the social media has considerably been improved and made people more aware of using social media, which will be one of the forms that we use for notification, notifying the public on this. As Mr. Goodman said, there is no budget for this at present, and it would be a decision for full council, but as I say, on the results that we had from the previous distribution of leaflets across the whole district, I think I would find it personally very difficult to justify that sort of expenditure for the increase from last time was minimal, I think is a fair assessment. Yes.
Chairman, may I come back?
Yeah, by all means.
Thank you. Chairman, I think given the current position with COVID, and still we know that some residents are fearful about going out, and older members, and I think Councillor Foster raised this during the working group, about older members of the community who may not have access to digital means such as social media, as you've just mentioned. I still think that this consultation warrants the expense of letting every single household in the district know what about this consultation, and I do feel strongly about that. And I think as members of political parties, when we campaign, I think everyone in this room puts a leaflet out. Why do we do that? Because we know someone could read that. We don't rely on social media. We do that as a method to get the message across, and I think it would be, I'll be as strong to say, negligent of us not to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, fine, yeah.
as Councillor Newport said, I did raise that at the working group, and I do share that concern. The feedback from the consultations before was quite small in reality, but of course, when plans come forward in due course, the feedback is massive. And I do recall reading in one of the papers a discussion about using the parish magazines, piggyback on that with an article from the district council as a means of doing that.
I think Councillor, I think there's all sorts, Mr Goodwin has got quite a comprehensive list that he's put together of how he feels that we could cover this situation fully. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be down to a financial decision, either a recommendation from this committee to go down that route, or for full council to decide they want to go that way. But there is no budget allocated for it, so there is, at the moment, as far as I can see, unless I'm wrong on this, there is no reason, no way that we can sanction that sort of proposal. But Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, may I just quickly come back? As I said, if we piggybacked on the parish newsletters, which they already pay for delivery for, it would be the cost of printing an extra page, probably, is my guess.
Okay.
I can reach the microphone myself. Thank you. I am aware this is a concern to Councillor Sperry, because I think at the very first meeting you said you wanted an improvement on the first local plan over terms of engagement. I think in some ways it's much better. We're looking at digital much more. I still do have a concern about the people we will inevitably miss in the consultation. I would like to know, we all know there was a court case about the lack of consultation last time. I'm aware of the way it went, and the Rochester Council didn't lose the case. Is there a risk if we don't, could we be seen as not consulting fully if we do not put a leaflet out, is my first concern. I agree about £15,000. I think the pandemic leaflet we did was £15,000. I'm not sure if anyone was on the calls, but I remember that was being quoted. I know I've also brought this up, but I'm just concerned about how we're going to measure. It's all very well putting something on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram or on TikTok. How are we measuring whether that's been engaged with? And I don't just mean views, I mean really engaged with. If they're clicking on links, following through items through and then commenting. I think it's important we understand engagement on this. And also, you're probably well aware that I will probably make sure everybody in Holbridge knows about this. I will probably give leaflets to everybody in Holbridge about this, so it saves the council some money. Could there be an issue around different areas having different sorts of engagement like that as well? And just going back to the social media, I think it's very important, and I think I've raised this before, that we have a budget for paid for ads. It doesn't have to be thousands, but I think it's important that we do paid for ads as well to make sure it gets a greater reach. And you can do those to geographical areas quite easily. I've had a look at this over the last few months, and I think other councillors have done these before. So they're the key issues. Thank you.
Have you gone down this road, down with communication with?
Yeah, if you like, I'll come back on that if you like. So yeah, just to emphasise really that absolutely promoted ads on Facebook, Instagram, things like that are definitely within the kind of budget that we have allocated for this. You know, I have worked with the comms team in the past to do that, and obviously, as you've alluded to, they can be targeted. So, you know, if we were really wanting to push them at people of a certain age or people in a certain location, then that is possible as far as I understand it. Just to come back on some of the other points raised as well, I mean, in terms of analytics for the consultation, so absolutely at the point at which people respond, they will be asked a basic question about how they found out about it. That's at the very basic level. But also when it comes to social media, promoted posts, all the kind of things like that, absolutely we can mine that information and find out broad trends about it, and that can allow us obviously to do some relatively primitive but probably still fairly accurate analysis about representation, and obviously about how people are finding out and possibly who's not finding out. And 6 weeks is a fairly long time, so we can obviously always put into place measures during the middle of a consultation to try and address any deficiencies that we do notice. And we will, as before, prepare a feedback report. So this committee will get a report in late summer, which will obviously summarise the consultation and obviously any trends or lessons learnt from that consultation, as we did with the issues and options. Just on the point about court case and compliance and things like that, I think the main point to emphasise on that really is that the most important thing is that the consultation is in compliance with the Statement of Community Involvement. And the Statement of Community Involvement does bind the council to certain things, but it also gives the council the freedom to decide what is appropriate in certain cases as well. So in putting together that consultation strategy, we've very much been making sure that we are compliant with that SCI as a minimum, and obviously always also going above it in some cases. So things like promoted ads, things like that aren't particularly prominent in the SCI. So in that sense, I'm confident that we would be consulting completely compliantly, and obviously there's no national requirement to consult in a particular way other than to do with dates and in formats and things like that, but we're confident that we would tick all of those. And just on the point about the letters, I mean, the council can obviously choose to do that, but again, there's no requirement in the SCI or in national policy to send a letter to every household at the moment. But like I say, it's not impossible for the council to do that. It wouldn't create an issue to do it in terms of compliance.
Anything else?
Could I just come back?
Yeah, go on.
Quickly on that. Okay, I'll take your points. If information comes back during the consultation that maybe some people aren't being reached, how will that be decided by the chairman with someone else, or would it be decided by the actual officers whether to broaden the consultation at all?
Well,
you said about feedback. Will there be quite live feedback so that either the chairman or the committee itself can say, well, we don't think this is not working very well, because it is going to be essentially over the summer, I understand, and I would have thought I know it says 6 weeks, but I thought minimum 6 weeks might be best, and I understand that it's a statutory limit on that as well.
I think that I might be wrong, but I believe that we've got this period because that meets with criteria,
Yeah,
and also it
that.
keeps us on the timetable that we need to maintain. I don't think we want to keep extending all these areas of progress. Otherwise, the next thing we'll find is that we start drifting again into periods that we are behind the schedule, and I think that is very important that we maintain the timetable that we have set.
I quite agree. I think we're late anyway doing this. All it was a minimum of. I'm just looking forward. Who knows what's around the corner?
We've ticked,
if there's an interruption or something for some reason.
We've ticked the criteria on that area. I think we should leave that. With regard to the items that you have raised, I don't really see how we can make a recommendation for that on the basis that we have no budget for this. I would suggest that we refer to the recommendations on page 5.5 and that this goes to full council as such, and that you raise the issue at full council when the item comes up. I've just checked this with Sonia, and that would be perfectly within your rights to do so if you so desire. If you want to make a case to full council, that leaflet should be distributed to the whole county, to the whole district. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Visiting. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. But it says it in item 5, on point 53, it says that the consultation strategy commits to, and there's quite a few bullet points. What the other points are going to add. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I will start again. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman, on item 5.53, it does state the consultation strategy commits to, and there's quite a few bullet points there,
Yep.
where the other councillors have brought up the issues about press release. So I feel that all these bullet points have been answered. I don't really believe we can do any more, unless of course we do our own newsletters and put something in our own newsletter. But I think we've done quite a bit of what we're expected to do.
I think, Councillor, we've done everything that we thought we realistically could within this committee. If full council wishes to say something different, then all we can do is let full council take that view. But at the moment, I think we've pretty much exhausted this line of conversation. If there's no more questions, we do have 3 recommendations in section in paragraph 9.1. Recommendations, if we're all in agreement, we will vote on those with the understanding that should you feel that you wish to raise the issue with full council when these reports are submitted, then you do so. Is that okay? Are we all in agreement with the recommendations, members, on 5.5?
Agreed, Chairman.
Agreed?
Yeah, on the basis of the statement, in conjunction with your statement.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, Mr. Goodman, to item number 6, statement of community involvement.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Statement of Community Involvement is a document that sets out the ways in which the council will involve the community in both the local plan, but also planning applications and also the enforcement process. So there's a requirement in national policy and legislation that it is reviewed every 5 years. And as we adopted our last version in the summer of 2016, we are now at that 5-year window for a review. And naturally, that review has identified quite a few areas that require updating, both in terms of coronavirus, in terms of new practices and things like that, but also in the context of just a few minor points, such as, removing the reference to fax, given we're no longer able to receive comments by fax. So the changes themselves are made to the adopted version. It's not a whole new document. It is a changed version of the 26 document. And those changes have been made in order to meet that 5-year review requirement, but also to make sure it's up to date, realistic, and a worthwhile resource for residents and others. So the recommendation is that this, similar to the previous item, also goes out for a period of public consultation. My proposal would be to twin track the 2 documents. It is worth probably saying that it's not a legal requirement to consult on a statement of community involvement. However, the council has done so in the past, and I consider it to be a worthwhile exercise, a relatively cost-neutral exercise to allow the public and others an opportunity to shape this document, particularly given it is ultimately about community involvement. So the recommendations, I believe, are that it is consulted upon for that period of 6 weeks, and then the version post-consultation will be returned to this committee with any recommended changes, and at that point it will be for the committee to decide whether to recommend to council that it is adopted. At this stage we're not agreeing the wording per se, we are agreeing the wording to go out to consultation. So that's probably all I have to say on that item, Chairman, but if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one quick question, Dan. I noticed the channels in which you can report planning enforcement on 23. If you want to report a breach of that of planning. One of the methods that isn't in there is via the web chat on the website. It says online, but it's just got the link to it, how would web chat and those chats be funneled into comms with the planning team? Because as we know, the phones don't tend to get answered very well at Rochford, and Marcus is laughing, but it is something that comes up time and time again. And when I've spoken to the acting managing director about it, the channel is being pushed to use the web chat. So shouldn't the web chat be in there somewhere, or how you're going to deal with the process that's going to be dealt with, and is that a recognised way of reporting into the council?
I think possibly one of my colleagues may want to answer this, given it's to do with enforcement. It's not my cup of tea.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. It's a very valid question. Customer services man the web chat, and then customer services will then email planning.enforcement, so it gets picked up there, and that email address is on there.
So, sorry, just going back to this document then, so really web chat should be in there as a channel for reporting that. Because at the moment it just says online via the form.
Yeah, it says phone
email,
that.
phone, post or in person.
Yeah.
It doesn't say about web chat, which is a different channel. It's not using a web form.
Yeah.
The chat is a different channel.
Okay.
So that really should be included in that document.
Yeah, well, we can make those amendments.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think because as we know that that's being pushed more, it's worth having it in there. Sorry.
Okay. Well, on the basis that we, and if there's any other question, on the basis that we include that in the final document presented to full council, can we go along with the recommendation in 8.1? Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Excuse me, Councillor.
So easy to forget, isn't it? There'll be a day when we reach for a microphone and it's not there. It's about the social media again. We're talking about media such as Twitter. That's on page 10 of 32, which is probably a different page on different things. Page 3 of the report. We'll be using, assume this is going to be all our channels now, which I think includes Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, don't know. I think it's useful to highlight the ones we do. If we're consulting people, I think we should highlight all of the social media outlets. I noticed that we're not, and I think that's probably understandable to some degree, that we're not going to accept comments via social media. I don't think you can probably properly answer the consultation, a consultation particularly usefully through Twitter or Instagram. I suggest Facebook might be a different point. There's certainly good things to pick up. I wouldn't. Are we turning off comments on this then? Is that what we're saying, or will we be taking a note of comments for engagement? And again, this comes back to what I was talking about on the previous item. They're sort of similar in many ways, both these items, because one follows the other. But I think we should make a mention of engaging, if required, in paid media ads on this as well.
You've already made that point.
I know this is a different
paper. I think you've made the point of paid ads, and I think Councillor Goodman Mr. Goodman has already answered this aspect in the earlier statement.
I know, but this is a different paper. It's about engagement. I take your point, and it's
the same conversation.
Yeah.
Just in a different section.
Yes. But one is about consultation. This is about how we go about the consultation.
Well, I think.
So.
I think
I
we
don't
can
want
argue. I think we can argue or discuss all evening.
Yeah. So if you don't want to put it in there, that's fine. I'm just saying I think it should be in there.
Yeah.
That's it.
May I just quickly say on the issue of comments via social media. So the main reason why that's not possible is that there's a legal requirement both for local plans and planning applications that comments aren't anonymous and that they're attached to
Thank you.
ideally an address. And so because social media is so anonymised, or not, it's just not possible without kind of extensive dialogue with the comment leaver. But that's not to say that they can't be picked up in a more kind of informal way to get a feel of public feeling and things like that, but just formal representations can't be made because of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's important to note in this document, pages 7 and 8, where the update is put in there in regards to media and advertising. This has now gone in, bearing the Regulation 18 and also going on to the plan stage. So I think a lot of the comments that some members have made this evening are actually highlighted in the document itself, in the update. So I think it does take those things into consideration, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Well, on the basis of the one specific item that has been highlighted, which I'm sure we can include into the final presentation to full council, can we agree on the recommendation as in 8.1 on page 6.3, the statement of community involvement 2020 run review be consulted on for a period of 6 weeks with the inclusion of the comments that we've made. Are we in agreement, members?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7. Off you go again, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next item is the local development scheme. So the local development scheme is a statutory document. It sets out a timetable for plan making, and we are required to maintain an up-to-date local development scheme to keep people informed about progress on the local plan. So this latest update goes hand in hand with item number 5 in terms of making it clear Council's intention to consult on the spatial options document this summer, as well as providing a realistic timetable for the next stages of plan making. So this is hopefully not completely new. Members may have seen obviously project plans that present similar information. This is a more formal document than a project plan, and we are required to keep them up to date. So in that sense, it is an up-to-date timetable to monitor our progress against, and obviously make any amendments later down the line if they're required, either because of a change in approach or because of a change in timetable, whether that's bringing things forward or otherwise. And because it's a statutory document, there is a requirement that this is adopted. Hence, the recommendation to this committee is that it's recommended to full council that the document at Appendix A be adopted.
Okay, members. Any questions on this particular item? Yes, Ian.
Yeah, part of this may be my newness to this particular subject. On the back page of the scheme report, it talks about the subject of failure for infrastructure to be delivered, risk low. I wonder how that assessment is arrived at.
Okay, so clearly through the local plan, there's a requirement to identify the infrastructure that's required to deliver the strategy. So we're still at a stage where we haven't settled on that strategy. So the infrastructure requirements are obviously not known in detail at this point. However, we are hoping to commission an infrastructure delivery plan, viability assessment, and some other evidence in the next couple of months. And those will start to identify the infrastructure required and the cost of delivering it. What I would also say is that it's obviously important that the strategy that goes into the new local plan, which is for members to determine, subsequently to this consultation, will also need to make sure that appropriate infrastructure is delivered to support the strategy. So the level of risk being identified as low, is a judgment based on the fact that there's plenty of work planned to make sure that that infrastructure can be delivered. It's not that there's no risk. Clearly there are risks around viability of development, etc. However, I think probably all members of this committee and us as officers are committed to making sure that the infrastructure is delivered alongside the new local plan. And in that sense, the low risk has been identified. This can be reviewed over time, but there's nothing in front of me right now to give me greater concern that that would be a medium or high risk in my judgment.
Thank you.
It may be appropriate at this point to say that while it seems that Mr Goodman is, a one-man band, he isn't a one-man band, and that he has got the capabilities and the resources to bring in additional expertise as and when he feels it's appropriate to make sure this programme stays on track. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mark?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think you're seeing me sometimes. I think it's a very good point raised there. I did a course on risk today, so it might be someone's bad day. I can't see how we can class it as low risk if we're saying we're not sure what the risk is. If that's what I understood was what was just said. That's how it came across to me. We're not sure of the risk at this point because we've not done an assessment.
Well, can I just ask, what would your assessment, what would you like it to say?
Unknown.
Well,
I think I don't see how we can. A non-past performance, I'd rate it a medium to high. On past performance.
Well, I think Mr Goodman is our officer on this assessment. His assessment and his professional expertise is that the risk at this stage is low. I'm certainly not qualified to argue with him. I don't know if anybody else is, but I don't think that I could argue on a professional status that his assessment is wrong. If that's how he believes it to be, then as the officer of this council, we'll have to support him fully.
Yeah. And as councillors, we are here to raise things we may see as issues.
Yeah.
And it's not an indication of how we regard Daniel, which is quite highly. I do still have concerns, so as long as my opinion is noted on that, and I think the risk is probably higher than that. Also, going off of that, we've got potential mitigation. Consider alternative options for delivering infrastructure, including exploring infrastructure first approach. I myself have written to Councillor Lee Scott, the new Cabinet Member at Essex for Highways and Infrastructure, asking if they are doing a strategic overview of infrastructure and transport links, etc. for Essex and our district in particular. I've not yet had an answer. Have we also asked that, or are we aware that that's being done?
Well, I mean, we certainly,
yeah.
I mean, we certainly have regular conversations with them around infrastructure requirements. I think it's difficult at this stage to really talk about the infrastructure required for the new local plan because obviously it's linked to development that we don't know if it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and how much. So it's, we have a vague understanding, I suppose, of the likely levels of growth that would be needed to support new infrastructure, and we've got a very good understanding of perhaps where the infrastructure isn't working very well at the moment. But what I would say is that at this time we don't really have any details, although similar to my previous point, I've got no concerns at this moment in time that we're likely to struggle to make a good case for infrastructure investment, but I appreciate there's another aspect to infrastructure around that's not linked to growth, that's linked to capital investment and everything else. And I think probably perhaps I'm not the person to know all the details on Essex County Council's capital investment, but certainly that link to planning, I have no major concerns in the context of the new local plan at the moment. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, members? Okay then, members. On page 7.2 is a recommendation. We recommend to Council that the Local Development Scheme 2021-23 set out in Appendix A be adopted and published on the Council's website. Are we all in agreement, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Last but not least, item number 8, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you, Chairman. So the last item on the agenda is an evidence-based document. It's the site appraisal paper. So the purpose of this document is to undertake an initial assessment of the sustainability of the different sites that have been put forward to the council as part of the call for sites. And the main purpose of it is to provide a kind of transparent and robust assessment of the performance of sites against a whole host of criteria, which is obviously useful to inform interested parties, whether it's residents, landowners, etc. What I would emphasise is that it's not about selecting sites at this stage, although clearly it could evolve into a process for selecting sites. And in that sense, it doesn't weigh the criteria against one another, and it doesn't try to form firm opinions or conclusions around whether certain sites are good candidates for development or they're not. It really is just for information and to inform future work. I did note at the working group meeting there were some concerns about the clarity of some aspects of the document, particularly around use of colour in the tables and the maps. What I would say to members is that, as explained at the working group, we are working on an interactive map, and the hope with that is that it would allow people to easily see the results of this paper without having to strain their eyes looking on a side of A4. We hope that that map will be available by the time we go out to consultation, so in the next 3 to 4 weeks. As I said earlier, there's no weighting amongst the criteria, and I'm sure it could be argued that there are other criteria that could be looked at, but we have tried to remain detailed but proportionate in selecting criteria, obviously taking into account the amount of information available and the level of variation between different sites. And in that sense, they are all scored, every criteria, on a scale at the moment between the worst performing and the best performing. I know I've had a suggestion about changing that to a numerical scale, and I'm happy for members to consider whether or not that would be a better way of presenting the information. I think the bottom line is it's about scoring sites, but it's not about selecting sites, and I think it's quite an important nuance, and that's emphasised in the document.
Okay, members. Any questions on that? Go on, Jane. Oh, so go on then. Sorry, so I didn't see up there.
Thank you, Chairman. Realistically, I would like to congratulate the officers. This is a huge piece of work that has been completed, and it's extremely comprehensive, and I believe that the new interactive map that I got samples of, I think you may all have had some. I'm not sure whether Mr. Goodman sent them out, but it gives a great idea of how it's actually going to work, and I believe it was Councillor Newport who put that question to the committee in regards to that work being done. And I think it's going to be very useful for anybody who actually goes on the site to look at each individual site to be able to have that come up rather than going through the whole list going down, because it's a bit of a tiresome job. But you know, I'm very grateful that the officers have really got stuck in to this because it's a tough bit of work, but it needs to have absolute clarity so that everybody understands exactly the merits or demerits of every site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. James?
Thank you, Councillor Ward, for recognising my input on that. Yeah, just going back to the tables and the use of lettering over a numerical scale. I feel that a numerical scale would be visually a lot easier to interpret than what we have in front of us now. Also, that a lot of these tables don't have a legend on, so you have to you keep flicking back to further on back in the document to actually understand what you're trying to look at. So I think I do have a strong suggestion to the committee that we change that to a numerical scale, because I think 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 is a lot easier to interpret. I know that during the working group meeting there was talk about the maps, and I think the resolution of the maps needs greatly improving, because I think that's already been recognised. But also, I've got a thing about mapping with a mapping science degree, but with the interactive map, I took a brief look at it today, and I don't know if you've done that in ArcGIS or something like that with layers, and I think as a mapping professional, if you like, that to me is quite easy. I think we need to think that we're putting this out to the public, to the consumer. Is that going to be, has it been tested across multiple devices? Does it work on a mobile phone? Does it work on an iPad? Does it work on a desktop computer? Does it work on a Mac? Does it work on Windows? Has all that been tested? That's a concern, because we know if we're pushing all this information out digitally, we're just going to, officers are going to get inundated with, that didn't work, couldn't see it, those sorts of comments. And so it's really important that all that sort of testing is done prior to this going out. And one of the things that I would have personally done if I was producing an interactive map, and I'm not trying to take anything away from what you've done, but I would have probably used Google Mapping more, because people are familiar with it, and you can get a street level view, you can get satellite views, everything. And I think we'll all recognise that some people find it easy to read maps, other people find it very difficult to read a map and get orientation. So I think it's very important that they're very clear with road names and landmarks where people can, I think you will know, Chairman, and Councillor Ward will know, when we were stood with maps up in front of us, people often say, well, I don't quite know where that is, and you know, and I think from an interactive map we could get there, you know, it just, and I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it's probably not too much more work. But I would like to see what you put together before we say, yeah, that's what we're going with. I think a live demo would be good. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's fine. So you are right. I mean, it is ArcGIS. What I would say is, and I'm by no means an expert, but you know, I do plan to talk to the council's IT team who do have a specialty in GIS, and I know from, you know, my amateur efforts kind of so far on that, on what we've been talking about, there is an awful lot of functionality available on that service in terms of building a web app, really, where, you know, there's a few dozen different functions that you can add in, and you can make it look in any one of 1,000 different ways, really. And I know that there's probably a fair amount that can be done in that sense to make it, you know, a very intuitive map. And I've got no problem with sharing, you know, a demo of it with members when the version of it's ready. I mean, the advantage of going down this route is obviously that we have an existing license, as far as I know, with Esri, so it's not about going out and commissioning or contracting somebody to build it for us, which I probably would say might be a fair amount more expensive. But I'm no issue with having it looked at by members at all. And ideally it will be ready for the consultation in 3 to 4 weeks, but that should be, as you've kind of alluded to, plenty of time to put something together that's effective. So probably no objection from me on that sense.
Okay. And you also said, Mr. Goodman, that you considered a numerical rating probably, you know, within the scope. There's no big deal there.
I'm more than happy to change it to a numerical range if members don't object.
May I come in?
Yeah, go on then.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but I actually think the numerical ranging would come in gradually as we go along. I think that's going to be very necessary as we're starting to look at the sites and understanding to give us a clear idea of where it will rate, and probably a 1 to 10 would be better than probably a 5. It will give us a finite amount within that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's quite reasonable as we move, as we progress from Regulation 18 and going across. As we're looking at the sites, it will give us a very good idea of those sites which we are actually feeling are more appropriate than others, and it will get a proper rating on its deliverability and things like this. As
Well,
we go
I think
along.
that the long and the short of it is,
Yep.
yes, we go for the numerical. That seems to be the main consensus, and we'll leave it to you, Mr. Goodman, to implement it.
And can you just tidy it up with a legend on the tables as well, please, Dan?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, members. Well, this brings us, I think, to the recommendation on page 8.3. The committee resolves that the site appraisal paper set out in Appendix A be noted. Agreed, members? There being no other business, I'd like to thank Mr. Goodman and his team for all the work they put in on our behalf and the residents' behalf. Thank you very much indeed, and for officers and for you members for coming along this evening. Thank you very much.